You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, I welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing pretty good.
Sounds about right.
Pretty good,
perfect.
guys. We are in team breakdown mode right now. Some rookie drafts going on, some early dynasty drafts going on, a couple different settings. So getting right into it as we inch closer to the upcoming season. Schedules released Thursday. So that's always something kind of exciting, kind of take a sneak peek at your team and do your artificial wins and losses, right? Where you think they're going to rank up or stack up against the rest. Quite frankly, if you're in the NFC, I don't know that it matters. Like I just, it's the Eagles, right? Like I just don't see anybody beating the Eagles. So the AFC, bloodbath. The NFC, unless San Francisco can pull a magic rabbit out of their hat, I don't think anybody's knocking off Philly this year.
I think you're onto something there. That's a pretty powerful team, potent team that got a little bit better towards the tail end of last month. But that schedule release is kind of fun. And think about back like last year, all the people, when the schedule comes out, and granted it's just, fodder for talk radio and dudes like us to talk about, how good are they going to be? And we go through the Broncos schedule. We're like, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. And then it wasn't that at all. So proceed with caution when you're doing those.
I might make a spreadsheet this year of the NFL regular season and do
and see where you figure how good you are.
Season wins and loss for each team, just to see how close I am.
That would be something.
I mean,
I don't think I would like to have that sense of I have no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, I already know I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I don't want that reinforced.
I got to find the time to do it, but I would like to do it.
Well, when you get that spreadsheet done up, send it over my way because I'll participate with you. So it'll be fun. Something we can pull into the Friday show as well, right? When we go through in season, when we break down each one of those matchups, and we're giving our picks on props, we're giving our picks on spreads, over unders, all of that. So yeah, it'll be fun to kind of see how that stacks up with our other predictions there as well. So
it would also be fun to see how thought process changes 4 months away from the season versus in season, right? Like. Because 4 months away, like I said last year, 4 months away from the season when the schedule came out, we all thought that Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett were leading the Denver Broncos back to the glory days, and then it didn't. So like that would be, new information. Obviously, you're allowed to change your opinion, but it would be interesting, and I think it's gonna be fun.
Don't worry, we can relive that similar process now with the Jets.
Yeah,
right. Nathaniel Hackett, new to the Big Apple here, right? They've got a defense that was really darn good with a good defensive mind there, and they just traded for what appears to be a top tier quarterback. So we'll see how well that translates in New York for him, and all of that. Could you imagine Jets fans if they get a Nathaniel Hackett 2.0 in New York of what they just saw here in Denver?
If Nathaniel Hackett turns into Adam Gase.
Well, we've already made that comparison more than once on the show, so it's apt. It is an apt comparison.
Boy, I don't know that they would.
Speaking of dynasty drafts,
go ahead.
Apparently I am on the clock.
You are on the clock.
Dynasty Best Ball League that our friend Derek sent up. So,
Alex, I noticed that you didn't accept your invitation. That's okay. We started without you.
I didn't see it.
Well, it's best ball. It's dynasty. I'm sure there'll be at least 30 more this offseason that we'll get going on that.
My bad. I really didn't see it. Is it on Sleeper?
Yeah,
it is.
Oh, so Kevin, you took my pick there. Now we're just going to get into this one, and we'll get into that one. So Kevin taking T. Higgins, which I really like the pick because I was going to take him at the tail end of the third in this best ball dynasty, but you sniped me there. But I really like the pick there for you.
So I guess first for setup purposes, slow draft, 12 team, super flex, 3 wide receiver. Is it a half point bonus for tight ends? So, and here we are. So we are coming into the tail end of the third round. I am picking 11. Derek is picking 12, thanks to the randomizer who loves sticking me at the end of every single freaking draft I do. So I'm okay with this. So first round, Christian McCaffrey at 111. I'm pretty happy with that. It went super quarterback heavy. So I made the decision to pivot. Christian McCaffrey in the first, followed that up with A.J. Brown at the 2.2, and then T. Higgins at the 311.
Right. I was one of those two. For whatever reason, the randomizer thinks that you and I need to draft like within a pick or so.
Side by side.
Yes,
Yeah.
like constantly. It is amazing because we'll even be in there and we'll be spaced far apart. Like it doesn't matter when we come into the draft, whatever. The randomizer seems to go, nope, you two, you're going to draft right next to each other and you're going to draft in the back half of almost every single draft that you do. So, you know what though? While we're right here, let's just make this turn and keep this picks going here and we'll rock and roll this. So he took CMC, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins with his first 3 picks. I also pivoted away from the quarterbacks there. I took CeeDee Lamb, Bijan Robinson. My first and probably only place that I'm going to get Bijan Robinson anywhere.
I almost took him for that exact same reason. Like, man, I'm not going to get Bijan anywhere this year. Anywhere. Right. And then I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't have him. Dynasty League, I understand going 2 overall, but I couldn't do it when McCaffrey's only 26 years old and in a San Francisco offense that's just going to feature the hell out of him.
Absolutely. So, you know what? I'm gonna keep the pivot going here and just keep that rolling. We're going with another young running back here, Ken Walker.
That's where I thought you were going.
Yep. Well, if T. Higgins was here, that was who I was going to go with. I was hoping to get the Ken Walker, T. Higgins.
I know who you're going here too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I bet you that this one surprises you.
No, that does not surprise me at all because I knew you weren't drafting Kyle Pitts.
Well, Mark Andrews was also on the board, and we know my love for Mark Andrews out of Oklahoma, but Chris Olave was the other pick. So going young here, got the CeeDee Lamb, Bijan Robinson, Ken Walker, Chris Olave start.
Fair enough. And then after Olave, I followed that up with Najee Harris. So, what Najee's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Najee went 11th off the board.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that.
It's funny because I got into some trade discussions with somebody the other day, and they were trying to tell me all about the Najee, and they were trying to get both. It was Ken Walker and Josh Jacobs, and they wouldn't. I was like, okay, well let's start talking, and you got to bring me back like a Najee on that one. Oh no, not a chance. I'm like, well, first of all, we're gonna rank Ken Walker ahead of Najee, at least in my book. This was before the draft too, so before Zach Charbonnet and all that go there. So you had a guy coming in off of a heck of a season, Josh Jacobs, who just had a career year, so and is playing for yet another contract. So in a team that will likely utilize him a lot like they did last year. So
yeah, I thought Jacobs might make it back to me there in the third round, and I would have had a hard time trying to make a decision between T. Higgins and Josh Jacobs.
Right.
Now, I'm glad I don't have to do that because the 1 year I drafted Jacobs was his
yes.
year as a pro, and I hated every single week having to start him. So I'm glad I don't have that decision. But nevertheless, here we are. So We'll keep everyone posted because this draft ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So next week on Tuesday, I'm sure we'll be in like the 13th round, and we'll be able to update everybody.
Yeah, that's probably very true. So we'll rock and roll that, and we'll keep the ball rolling there. A couple of comments coming in there. Jamie saying, "What up, good old boys?" And saying Najee is going to go ham this year, being healthy and adding Washington for blocking. He has Najee one spot ahead of Jacobs. Well, we'll agree to disagree. Redraft. I don't think so. I'll take that under advisement for dynasty purposes there, Jamie.
I like Najee this year too.
So
I do. I think with what Pittsburgh's doing, developing the way he ended the season last year, played through a minor list Frank injury, had a hip ding, like he did play hurt, and kudos to him. But the back 4-6 weeks of the season really started to look like the guy we thought he was going to be throughout the entire season. So I like Najee this year as well because he's sliding down draft boards, so you can pick him up as that RB2. Right. And I think he gives you a pretty clear path to an RB1 finish. Right. And so there it's about the value, right? I got him as the 11th back off the board. I fully expect him to finish 11 or better. So I think there's some built-in value with that pick by just sitting back and waiting. Right. But I knew he wouldn't make it to me in the 5th, right? Oh, no. I had to take him there in the 4th based off of what was off the board. So I'm perfectly happy with that pick.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I think Najee's a great pick right there at the 11. And really, I see him kind of in that similar finish. 11, 12, 13 is kind of where I'm, early season rankings kind of putting him right there in that range. So I like it. And then Jamie saying he has Najee at 10, so we're real close. Yeah, we're kind of all right there in that same ballpark. And when you're talking on, running back 10 through running back 13, you're talking a total of like 12 points over the course of a season. So, not even a point a week type of difference there. So we're all in the similar ballpark, saying the same thing, just putting a little different spin on it. I like it. All righty. Well, guys, we have a boatload, metric ton of players to break down. It is that time of year where we're going to start getting into the player breakdowns, really getting into this thing and going crazy on this one. And we're going to start it off with 3 teams tonight. And we're going to start it off those 3 teams, right? It's kind of the low end of the spectrum. And you're going to be looking at the Bears, the Texans, and the Cardinals are the 3 teams we're going to be breaking down. We'll get to 3 more next week here. And then Alex, put some pretty good questions to us over the weekend there as well. We're going to finish off the show with some really good kind of questions on, when to, for dynasty purposes and some actual just fantasy off-season maneuvering type of situations there. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a great show. Make sure you're following us on all the on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. Best place though, head over to the youtube.com/@GoodOldBoys. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, get those notifications, because we're getting to that time of year where we're going to be pumping out videos after videos after videos. And just like last season when we got to some cases where we were putting out 10 plus videos a day for your enjoyment and getting you guys ready for your redraft. Make sure that you're getting those notifications done so that way you don't miss any one of those things rolling out there. And speaking of YouTube, do us a favor, hit the subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment. We enjoy chatting and interacting. As you can see, Jamie kind of going back and forth through here as well. Alrighty, guys, let's get into it though. We're going to start team breakdowns here. Chicago Bears, who finished at 3-14 last year. They had a 40% pass, 60% run. They were ranked 23rd in points for, 28th in total yards for. Matt Eberflus is the head coach. Luke Getsy is the offensive coordinator. And we'll head right in here, starting where we always do with the running back room. D'Onta Foreman coming over in the offseason, finishes RB 35 last year, 203 rush attempts, 914 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 9 targets, 26 yards. Thoughts on D'Onta Foreman?
I think he's a serviceable back. Obviously, they paid him to come in there after what he did in Carolina last season with David Montgomery exiting. The thing with D'Onta Foreman, there's nothing special about him, right? Like, he doesn't receive the ball well out of the backfield. He's a bit of a bowling ball, so he can break some tackles and get some yards after contact for you, but he doesn't have next level speed. He's not really running away from linebackers, let alone once he gets in the secondary, there's going to be a lot of tackles from behind on him. But I do think that at the beginning of the year, the initial volume is going to be there, at least on the rushing side. I think Khalil Herbert's, we'll get into him in a bit. We'll still see some more receptions. But overall, Foreman, it wouldn't surprise me if he finishes maybe right at or slightly better than RB35, something similar. He might eclipse 1,000 yards, but I think in this offense, the running back always gets shortchanged, if you will, because of Justin Fields and his ability to run the ball.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. With a lot of, I mean, look, I played the David Montgomery game last year and year previous, and like it was effective, but D'Onta Foreman is not David Montgomery. So I would say that, what you see is what you get. I don't think that D'Onta Foreman is going to, wow us and all of a sudden jump up into RB1 territory. But this feels like it would be a really good, if he backed up last season with this, feels like it would be, right on par. And I think you would be okay with that, with what he is. So I like all these numbers, to pretty much replicate themselves. And I don't think that touchdown number goes up because of said Justin Fields and just how much, running he will do.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because when you look at it, right, like this is the offense. This is an offense from a run pass ratio mix. Like this is an offense that should have running backs scoring points in bunches. But again, right, it's not all going to the running back. Very similar to how we see out in Baltimore for many years, where the running backs are there. The running backs will have some fantasy value for you, but Lamar Jackson's going to get just as much run as any of those running backs is, if not more. Same thing played out last year when we looked at Justin Fields, who put up over 1,000 yards rushing, and got to a top 10 quarterback finish, not because of his passing work, but because of his legs and what he did on the ground. And that's going to cannibalize a lot of what we see in these running backs. And similar things going to be said, right? Like this is going to be a three-headed attack in the running game. So D'Onta Foreman is there, right? Kevin put it very, very well that his skill set isn't necessarily one that's going to blow you away, but he's a guy that can get you some tough yards and get you, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Like he's really good at that, right? He can be really good at those short yardage, short line type of deals. You got Khalil Herbert, who's an explosive back out of the backfield. Roschon Johnson, the rookie that they brought in. We'll touch on all of these guys here. But that being said, like this is going to be one of those that I think the highest running back is going to get maybe 180, maybe 200 yards a carry on this. And this is an offensive line that is really not very good. So D'Onta Foreman is a guy that I like for the value that you can get on him because he is going so late in drafts right now. He's going in well into the double digits, running back 43 off the board. 123 kind of overall is kind of where a lot of folks going to have him going. So right at the beginning of the 11th round there. And at the 11th round, sure, I'll take a dart throw at a guy that's probably going to come out the gate and be probably the starting running back for the Bears here, but is a guy that I think will ultimately cede a lot of touches throughout the season and as this goes along. Any other thoughts on D'Onta Foreman?
Nope.
All righty, let's go ahead and get into Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert was running back 39 last year, 180 rush attempts, 731 yards, 4 touchdowns, 9 receptions, 12 targets, 57 yards, 1 touchdown through the air. Thoughts on Khalil Herbert?
He showed well in glimpses, right? Like we thought when Montgomery got dinged up that Herbert would kind of cement himself. A lot of people last year were saying that he was a better back than David Montgomery. I don't subscribe to that. He is a little bit more electric. So I think it leads to more highlight plays than what Montgomery was doing. But I think he's going to be, when it's all said and done with, he's going to be fourth on the team in rushing attempts, right? I do think that you're going to have Fields leading the way. You have D'Onta Foreman that we just talked about, Roschon Johnson, which we're going to talk about here coming up, and then Khalil Herbert. Like, I do think Herbert might see the most pass work to begin with, just because he's a little bit more polished in that area. But a lot of this is going to come down to, when they do have to pass, when you're asking running backs for pass pro or blitz protection or anything like that, Khalil Herbert is not the best option there. Like, D'Onta Foreman, is currently the best pass protection running back they have. Johnson's number 2, just stepping into the NFL with what he did at Texas and everything else. So he is I guess he's an average blocker at the moment, has the ability to get in the weight room, understand those schemes, become a plus blocker in that system. But I'm not a big Herbert fan, guys. Like, I just think when it's all said and done with, and when the dust settles, he's going to be third on the depth chart. Like, he's going to be used for gadgetry type plays. He'll have some splash breakaway plays throughout the season. He might have the longest rush of the season for the Bears, not named Justin Fields, but I don't think that that's going to equate to consistent fantasy volume. So I would look at him as a best ball play at best, but I'm not actively looking to put him on my redraft roster.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with Khalil Herbert is going to be, will he be available? And that's not so much of a knock on, will he be available in terms of injury, which he did miss time last year. He only played in 13 games last year. But will he be available when they roll out the depth chart and the play gets called? Like, will he be on the field or will he be on the sideline more often than not? So that's the issue that you're going to run into with Khalil Herbert. I mean, he was good. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry last year. Like, that's a really good average. The problem was you only got 13 games of that, and you really, like, those were big numbers, but he did that on very limited touches. He had 129 carries and only 9 receptions. So, like, he wasn't seeing the football a ton. David Montgomery really asserted himself, and I just don't know that, why do you bring in a D'Onta Foreman? Why do you bring in a Roschon Johnson if you have a Khalil Herbert? Well, maybe it's because you don't think that Khalil Herbert is, that true 3-down back. Not that they ever asked him to be that, but you bring those guys in because you don't like what you already have. So it's a buyer beware with Khalil Herbert, I think. And I know that a lot of people are going to be, he's going to be the number 1 because he was the only consistent piece. But we've seen time and time again where running backs can come in and make an immediate impact. Especially when you've got a guy like D'Onta Foreman who understands the NFL, right, and has been around to see things, and a Roschon Johnson who's got a little less wear on the tread. So I would be careful with Khalil Herbert. I think he's worthwhile if you can get him in the right spot. That right spot, though, like, I wouldn't reach for him.
No, you certainly don't want to reach for him. And this is a guy that coming off the board right now, like, it really is kind of that buyer beware, almost sort of the standpoint that where you're going to get him, it's going to be one of those that you're just not going to be overly happy with the return that you're going to get, right? Like, again,
it's
Kevin hit that
super deep draft, right? I mean, you have to be running 20 rounds to think. At least me, I would have to be running 20 rounds to at least consider him somewhere in that 17 to 20 range. But most drafts, you're running 12 to 14 rounds, and he's just a guy who's going to get left behind. There's better third options, and really he's a fourth option for that team elsewhere. Like, I don't love it.
And where he's coming off the board at right now, right, is RB30. That's kind of where folks have him. So as an RB3, pick 79, like this is one of those that this is going to be, right? Like for him to return value on that, he's going to have to drastically produce more than what he's done and what he's shown in the past, right? AJ Dillon right now going later than him. Rashad Penny going later than him. Jamal Williams going later than him.
D'Onta Foreman going later than him.
D'Onta Foreman going later than him. Dameon Harris going later than him.
And I would rather have every single one of those guys.
Right.
Every single one you just listed, I would put on my team and be able to gladly go rounds with people on why I chose them over Khalil Herbert.
Okay, well let's go through this then, and let's play the game. Tell me when to stop. So Khalil Herbert, and then I'm just going to go off of running backs coming off the board after him. Khalil Herbert, James Cook, AJ Dillon, Rashad Penny, Jamal Williams, Dameon Harris, Antonio Gibson, Tyler Algier, Alexander Madison.
Right about there.
Okay, the next one was Elijah Mitchell, and then Samaje Perine, Jeff Wilson, D'Onta Foreman. And I think
I would have Foreman higher, but like right. Alexander Madison, I don't know. Like that's where I kind of
Madison
same situation, right? Same deal. You've got a guy that's going to hawk everything in front of you. That's really hard to supplant. Khalil Herbert, unfortunately, has two guys that are going to hawk stuff in front of him.
I'm not convinced that Cook won't be a post June 1 cut.
Yeah, which that very well could be. But Samaje Perine, I'd rather go Samaje Perine over that.
Oh heck yeah, with what juggernaut Javonte Williams is dealing with. Absolutely, I'm taking Perine over Herbert. Like, I think the one that was Tyler Gibson being drafted that high,
right? That one and Tyler Algier,
stupid dog.
Yeah, Algier's a little interesting, and I wonder if a lot of that is before the NFL draft, right?
Some of it could be, but and I can see Algier still getting like 180 to 200 touches just because Atlanta runs the ball as much as they do. But
Algier will easily outscore Herbert.
Yeah,
just off of second feeding in that offense.
Right. Well, and Algier's a guy too that doesn't look like it, but somehow manages just to break big plays open. Like, doesn't really have that blazing speed, doesn't really have but somehow just manages to find open field and go. Like he just somehow manages to do that. But we're down there well deep into a lot of these guys where, second, third string, obviously, and all of us are sitting there saying that we'd give him a higher vote of confidence than Khalil Herbert. I think that speaks to the point that that we're going through there. So Khalil Herbert is a guy that, again, will be, especially where he's coming off the board in that type of deal. I'm not going to be looking at him until probably the 13th, 14th round type of thing. Like that's probably the earliest that I would look at him.
I would rather draft Tank Bigsby.
Wow.
Like let's take a second and think about that, because I said if there's a running back bust in this draft class, it is Tank Bigsby. I would rather take Tank Bigsby at Jacksonville over Khalil Herbert in Chicago.
Right. All right. Fair enough. A couple of comments here we'll hit to before we get to Roschon here. Jamie saying that Foreman isn't better than Roschon, thinks that Roschon will out-snap him by week 6. It's going to be an ugly backfield, and that he'd rather take a chance on Herbert as the number 2 behind Sanders on the AB. Chuba. He'd rather have Jerome Ford way later. That's a shot right there. Shots fired.
I mean, there's going to be touches to go around there in Cleveland. That's not a bad sleeper pick.
True. All right.
No, I agree with a lot of that, honestly. And I do think that Roschon will eventually be the guy in Chicago. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it's going to come down to pass protection. I think a lot of it's going to come down to, what flows best within this offense, right? Like the Bears are not winning right now. So I don't feel like they would need to be in a huge rush to play Roschon Johnson. Talent-wise, yes, his talent should rise to the top, and he is better than D'Onta Foreman. But I don't know if the Bears are going to play it that way, only because why give him unnecessary touches if everybody's healthy when, you're probably at least another year away from being competitive in that division, let alone trying to make any sort of noise towards the playoffs.
Correct. Yeah. Alrighty. I like it. Let's go ahead and move on to the guy we've been hitting up here a little bit. Roschon Johnson, the rookie, drafted in the 4th round, pick 115 out of Texas to the Chicago Bears. Guys, what are our thoughts on Roschon Johnson?
I was surprised he went in the 4th. I guess I'm surprised he went to Chicago. It does make sense for the future, but with Chicago needing as much as they do, I think I was slightly surprised that that's where he ended up. But regardless of, he is a really good running back that was stuck behind a really great running back there at Texas, right? But he flashed when he got the ball. He has the ability to catch out of the backfield. We're going to see where this pass pro is. It has so much to do with young running backs and their ability to get on the field for all types of situations. But he has the skill set to be a 3-down back. It's just a matter of if he can pick up the NFL speed and concepts on what he's being asked to do. Late, I think he's going a little bit too early in redrafts than where I would like to take him. I would be looking at him probably in the 10th. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Derek, is he going in the 7th or 8th? Is that accurate? No, good. You're muted. Sorry. You're helping me and you're not talking.
He's going later. Right now he's running back 73 off the board, pick 262. As far as a lot of draft rankings have him.
It'll be interesting. Okay. That I understand that. I would like to refresh this segment as we get closer, because I think he's going to be creeping up, right? Like, as we hear more about training camp and everything else, I think this is a guy who, if you're drafting now and you can get that value, go ahead and grab it, because I do think he is going to see a massive surge as we get into August and draft season.
Interestingly enough, Jordan Mason actually going the running back 72. So the next running back off the board earlier than him right now.
Who? Jordan
Mason.
Really?
The 3rd, 4th stringer out there in San Francisco.
5th, 6th, 7th stringer.
Yeah.
What with how San Francisco likes to use those running backs.
Your numbers are current, but they're not going to be current here very quickly. We continue to throw drafts in. So, like I said, I think he's going to end up being like an 8th round pick. I still am not going to touch him till the 10th. Like, that's kind of where I'm looking at him, unless major injury goes down, right? Like, and not that we want injuries, but if Herbert or Foreman go down, I think his draft capital instantly skyrockets. So if you're getting him now, sit on it and wait. You'll get him late for a song, and then you'll be able to use him, especially if you're patient in the front half of this redraft season.
So early rankings, consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros. Roschon Johnson, somebody's got him as high as 31. Somebody has him as low as 93. And that's about all you need to know about what this is, because he could be as high as 31. He could be, I think it's more likely that he's as high as 31. I don't think it's as likely that he's as low as 93. But that's the margin, right? Because it is an unknown and you're not sure what you're going to get out of him, because you do have these 2 other guys in that backfield there. I would say, when it's all said and done, I'm more comfortable with him valuing out in that 31 range than I am in the 93 range. I don't know that he's up at 31, because I think he gets, I think there are other factors at play there, but that it feels like this is going to be a wait and see. And unfortunately for people that are drafting now, don't have that ability to wait and see. But where he's going now, that's great. I think you get good value for him. where he eventually ends up when we get into, redraft season, I think you're going to have to weigh a lot of pros and cons about who's going around him and what's still left on the board.
Yeah, that's very true, right? And I think you're right. Once we actually start getting into redraft, once we start really seeing a lot of drafts start taking place and ADP start updating, he will very, very quickly rise up to the board to the point where I think he's going to be in that, almost too expensive to draft for me type of range, right? Like I'm kind of right where you are, Kevin, where I think in, kind of 10th round, I'd probably look more at like the 11th, 12th is where I'd feel really comfortable taking him as kind of my probably my fourth RB that I'm putting on a team there, but definitely worth a shot there if you can get the value on him. Because I think that he will be a good late season play there. And the reports coming out of Chicago are very good around this. Like you listen to a lot of, the GMs and these guys start talking a little bit. There's a lot of reports coming out that they see him being a long-term solution for them in Chicago at the running back level. They just drafted this guy in the 4th round, right? This isn't one of those that they, spent an 8th overall pick on Bijan Robinson, and they're now kind of pot committed to this young man. They spent a 4th round capital on this, and 4th round day 3 players are not one where we see teams come out and say this a week or two after the draft that they see this guy being a very long-term piece of their future because they're only committed to him for so many years, and even at that point it's not that big of a contract that they're committed to there. So I think Roschon Johnson just had the unfortunate problem of playing behind another Johnson down there in or playing behind Bijan Robinson down there in Texas, and had he been let run loose, we probably would have seen him go a little bit higher here as well. So I like it. Any other thoughts here on Bijan? Not Bijan, Roschon. Wow. That's going to see the editing room floor.
Well, I hope so.
All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up and start heading into the wide receivers here. DJ Moore, who is now a Chicago Bear coming over off of that number 1 overall draft pick trade with Carolina. He finished wide receiver 22 last year, 63 receptions, 118 targets, 888 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Averaged about 6.9 targets per game. Thoughts on DJ Moore?
This poor guy needs a quarterback.
Damn skippy, right? Like 2 years ago, all 3 of us were right on that DJ Moore train, and we have been slowly sliding off just because his quarterback play has not been good. He is clearly the most talented wide receiver on the Chicago Bears, right? And I understand why they wanted him to be part of that deal when they traded out of the number 1 pick. Mooney, everyone thought that last year was going to be his kind of breakout season. He was going to be electric. And Mooney was downright terrible, absolutely sunk under pressure. That being said, Fields still looked for him. So it's going to be interesting. You're getting the hype, the marketing snapshots of Fields to, DJ Moore and everything else already. They're throwing against air. Like, it's going to take a minute for this chemistry to work itself out. Justin Fields has to prove that he can be an accurate quarterback and that he's not just kind of that one-trick pony who will complete, 53% of his passes but run for 1,300 yards. DJ Moore will allow him to do that, being a big-bodied receiver. He has sure hands. He's good to go underneath, meaning, he doesn't have an inflated sense of self. It is kind of where I'm at. He did a lot of that quick slant screen game in Carolina to get the ball into his hands. I think Chicago's going to do something similar, right? Like, you have to get Fields into a rhythm. And DJ Moore allows for you to do that while you have burners like Mooney and Claypool, both who are faster than DJ Moore, can kind of stretch the field and clear out the middle for DJ Moore to kind of find himself underneath. That being said, wide receiver 25 to wide receiver 27 is kind of in that range that I'm thinking for DJ Moore. I don't think the touchdowns are going to be there. So I think he could get to 900, 950 yards. I don't think we see him break 1,000. And I think the guy's only going to have 4 touchdowns this year. So we are going to see some regression there. It's going to be tough for him to get in and really cement himself as a true wide receiver 2 in an offense that is only 40% pass.
Yeah, you got to really believe that Justin Fields is taking that next step if you want to, have this guy as your wide receiver 1. To me, he's a wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 3, and that's not a knock on DJ Moore. That's a knock on this offense and this quarterback, and their inability to matriculate the football down the field through the air. So he's Kevin. I'm right there with you. Wide receiver 25. I mean, that's borderline in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range. And like, that's about all I can convince myself that he's going to be.
Yeah, I think we're going to be hard pressed to see DJ Moore get up into wide receiver 1. Would it surprise you though to see him get over 1,000 yards again and get into that wide receiver, 20 to 24 range? It wouldn't surprise me because he has the ability for big play. He's one of those guys that can catch a quick slant and take it to the house 70 yards type of thing there. And we've seen him do it with bad quarterback play and bad targets coming his way on the constant down there in Carolina for the last few seasons. So this is a guy that has struggled consistently with bad quarterback play and all of that. But again, I don't think we're going to see 4 touchdowns. Sounds about right to me, Kevin.
And that's why I think it's going to be hard to see him get above 20, right? Like even if he touches 1,000 yards with only having 4 touchdowns, I don't think that gets you there this season in the NFL. Part of until this past season, right? What was it? 6.8 targets per game, right? Is that what you showed us?
6.9. Yeah.
That's a pretty big drop off from where he was, right? Last season seemed low because Darnold, his first year, he peppered the hell out of DJ Moore. They weren't great targets, like you said, but he did pepper him with targets, and it just never added up to enough to justify his drafting spot.
Right. And that was one of those, I took him early in the home league, and it was very, very rough. But, outside of the 2021 season where you're right, he got 163 targets there. The rest of the seasons, that 118 to about 130 mark is been kind of where he's been playing at in a lot of cases. Last year was definitely a bit of a drop off where, last time he saw 118 in 2020, where he saw 118 targets for 66 receptions. He was averaging 18 yards per reception, whereas this last year was down to 14. So they were working some different things. They weren't driving the ball down the field there. And I think that's, unfortunately, we're going to see more of that here in Chicago, where they're going to be shorter routes, more intermediate routes, and they're not going to necessarily be trying to drive the ball down the field to him, unfortunately. So, any other thoughts on DJ Moore? I just wish he could get a quarterback.
Poor guy. Just needs a quarterback. Really funny. Real quick, while we're talking about it, the Fantasy Pros description, which I thoroughly enjoy. They say he's going through the Allen Robinson experience, which is like one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, and just does not have a quarterback to support him.
All right, and it's not.
That is unfortunately not the comparison that you want.
Right, and where he's coming off the board at wide receiver 19th, 45th overall type of thing, that puts him in a 4th round pick. And again, like, this is one of those that I think right now he's going to be overdrafted a little bit. If I can get him on the slide a little bit,
he might pay off for you, but
and if I could get him about a round later, I probably would pull the trigger on that one and feel pretty confident about that one. But you've got guys. Shoot, you still got guys going later than him, like Calvin Ridley, who, we'll see what that one looks like coming back there. Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Lockett, Terry McLaurin, Drake London, Christian Watson, all those guys going later than. And I think we could easily see all of those guys end up ahead of him when the dust settles for fantasy purposes there.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. Let's go ahead and hit up Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 74 last year, 40 receptions, 61 targets, 493 yards, 2 touchdowns, an average of 5.5 targets per game. Thoughts on Darnell Mooney?
Such a disappointment last year. Now, with him going with his finish, right, he's really kind of fallen off the draft board. So I do think that as a sleeper candidate for this year, he could see enough positive regression to be able to stick into a flex role in certain matchups. But I don't love this passing offense. And because of that, I'm not searching. If DJ Moore falls into my lap as my wide receiver 3, I might stick him in there. It's a good bye week fill in. Like, he still has that caliber to play up, but I didn't love Darnell Mooney to begin with. Last year, I did start to soften up on him and took a gamble on him in a couple spots, and I am regretting every second of that. So now he is back down to the bottom of my pile. Like, I am not drafting Darnell Mooney. I will run an empty wide receiver spot on my roster before I put him in there. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, wide receiver 74, yeah, we have some positive regression. He's going to be wide receiver 63. Like, it's still not – I can find better streaming options on a guy who's on a heater and have more faith than what Darnell Mooney's going to do in this offense.
Yeah, and realistically, like, I know we have a small sample size because it's only – 3 years that we're looking at here in terms of his NFL productivity. And, obviously 2 of those we have, Justin Fields, but even still, like, in 21, he had 140 targets. Sure, he only had 81 catches there. That's a number you'd like to see closer, but got over 1,000 yards and still only found the end zone 4 times. Like, that, there are more fruitful options out there. And then obviously last year, he did not deliver with only playing in 12 games. First off, that hurts. 61 targets in those 12 games and 40 catches for 493 and 2. Like, that, it's just, you can't have that as a reliable option, even in your wide receiver 3 spot. So even if he gets closer to, 2021 numbers, like, there are so many wide receivers in this league that I would rather look elsewhere.
I don't know if you're going to tell me that he gets 140 targets. I'll take the volume play and go with that, especially where he's going right now at wide receiver 49 off the board, 118 overall. That puts him kind of right there at the back end of a 10th round draft pick. So if you can tell me that he's going to get 140 targets and I can draft him in the 10th round, sure, I'll take the shot on him. But outside of that, no, thank you. And again, right, like, this is not a Chicago offense that we're going to see, throw the ball that many times to the point where, DJ Moore is going to eat and Darnell Mooney's going to eat and Chase Claypool is going to eat and Cole Kmet and Robert Tonyan are going to eat. Like, there's just not, frankly, not a big enough pie to go around, right? We said that, constantly the last few years when it came to, like, Baltimore, when we talked about those receivers. I don't see that dissimilar of a comparison here when I'm looking at these guys. I don't know that I really want to take a shot on any of the pass catchers outside of DJ Moore. Like, if DJ Moore's there sitting for me in probably the 5th round, yes, I'll take my shot on that because I believe in the talent there. But outside of that, I'm kind of steering clear of most of the rest of these guys, and unless it's a spot start or I feel particularly lucky on that calling my shot on a DFS play because of the matchup type of thing and the price is right type of deal. Like, outside of that, I'm staying away from most of these guys, Darnell Mooney included. And part of that might be is because I was one of the guys that got burnt by him in the home league last year, drafting him and DJ Moore, thinking I was going to get a, just target my way into points there. And no, thank you. So it did not. I'm not gonna risk that one again. Any other thoughts on Darnell Mooney?
I think the reason that Darnell Mooney did so well that year, Allen Robinson was hurt, only played in 12 games that year.
Right.
And realistically, like, That was the reason why. Now DJ Moore goes down. Obviously, that means that Darnell Mooney's going to have more of an emphasis in the offense, but still, yeah. I don't know that he gets to 140 targets. I would be shocked.
Right. I think maybe we see him get around 60, 70, 80. Like probably 60 to 70 would be where I'd feel really comfortable projecting him this early.
And that's really good if you had a quarterback that was, 65, 70% completion rate.
Right. Right. Or exactly. A couple of questions in here, and I'm liking these things. We're going to hit these up here real quick. Jamie asking, Mooney is falling late as your second flex. You got to pick one, Mooney or Elijah Moore.
I'll take Elijah Moore because I know look, Deshaun Watson was bad last year, but look, we know what he can be, right? He was bad because he missed 11 games or however many it was, 10, 11 games.
And sat out a season before that.
Yeah. So I will go with Elijah Moore here. Mainly because you know your enemy at that point, right? That's probably a bad analogy, but you know what you're getting into when you've got Deshaun Watson versus Justin Fields.
Yeah, cosign. I'd rather have Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I think I would take the shot on the unknown of Elijah Moore and the potential there more so. So consensus Elijah Moore from the panel here. Say Mooney's being drafted at 50, so it'll be your fifth wide receiver. There's other options in there, right? Like I'd rather take a shot on Nico Collins or Zay Jones or not Tyler, but DJ Chark.
Chark, yeah. What are they going to do with CJ Stroud? Right. Who becomes his go-to?
I'd rather take a shot on OBJ even at that point, right? Like just take the shot on that one where those guys are going later. Wan'Dale Robinson, rather take the shot on that one.
I'd take a Thielen there.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss Thielen, but you're right. He's absolutely in that ballpark there as well. Sorry,
I don't want to get off topic. He's dropping like a rock, and he's going to. I mean, it is a rookie, but
he plays your favorite role, the security blanket. Mm-hmm. So, and he's a touchdown goblin. So yeah, I could see it. Last one, then we're going to head on to the next receiver here. Sutton or Mooney? Rather have Sutton, even though I have him 5 spots lower. Yeah, I'd still take the shot on Sutton over Mooney.
Again, when you face with these, I understand that, when you look at these wide receivers, it's easy to look at them as wide receivers and what they're going to do. But no other position is so dependent on one guy than the wide receiver position. Not even really tight end. Tight end, even the worst quarterback will likely locate a tight end more than any receiver. But receiver is based on quarterback so much, so that when you're basing these things off, which quarterback do you trust more to get them the football? There's your answer.
Right. Alrighty, I like it. Let's go ahead and head up the next one. Chase Claypool, wide receiver 71, 46 receptions, 79 targets, 451 yards, 1 touchdown, average of 5.3 targets per game. Thoughts on Chase Claypool?
Deep best ball threat, right? I see if they can connect on 1 or 2 more of the over the top shots. I think 1 touchdown is probably a little low for him. I think he's another guy that should be closer to 4 ish. So you see some touchdown positive regression there. Justin Fields likes Mooney. I would argue that Claypool's a better receiver than Darnell Mooney is. We'll see how that plays out, but I'm not going after Chicago receivers for my fantasy team. So I will leave him to a best ball type format where maybe I can capitalize on his 1 or 2 games a year that kind of puts him up into my starting roster. And you can get him so late that value pays itself off.
Yeah, I'm out.
All right. Well said. coming off the board, wide receiver 71, overall 172. Like, this guy's going to be undrafted in a lot of different leagues out there, and rightfully so, right? Like, I'm going to kind of subscribe to the same thing Kevin said. I like him for best ball. I'll take my shot on some DFS plays with him for, you have the matchups right, the cost is right, that kind of stuff there. But yeah, this is a guy that, not your season long is going to find it other options on the depth chart for you on that one. So moving along on that one, let's hit up the tight end room. Cole Kmet finished tight end 7 last year, 50 receptions, 69 targets, 544 yards, 7 touchdowns, an average of 4.1 targets per game. Thoughts on Cole Kmet?
I could see numbers similar to that, maybe slightly better if the passing game becomes just slightly more dynamic. But Cole Kmet's he's a top 10 tight end. He has the skill set. He started to find the end zone last year, which was a big deal, right? And I think Fields does trust him. So you have your security blanket. My only concern is that DJ Moore might steal some of that underneath work from Cole Kmet. But I think the hope is that the Bears find a way to be a little bit more balanced. So instead of a 40-60, you're looking for like a 47-53. Like, it's okay if they're more run heavy, and you probably always going to be that way with Justin Fields as your quarterback. But it's what can you do if you're increasing that passing volume by 7%? Like, what does that mean? And if that does increase, you figure the top 2 recipients of the percentage boost will be DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. So I have no problem drafting Kmet if I'm really waiting on tight end. I think that's a piece that I could be okay with. More often than not, I'm going to get a security blanket behind him, though, because I don't know that I'm going to trust that he's going to be completely relevant week in and week out. But I think outside of the top, 2, 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends, whatever, you're going to be doing that a lot this season anyway. So he's going to be in the range where I draft guys, like, because it's Travis Kelce or bust, right? We've talked about this. We'll get into it when we touch draft strategies. If I'm not getting Travis Kelce, I'm not touching a tight end until, the 9th round or later. So Cole Kmet falls right in there.
Yeah. If there was one, piece of the Chicago offense outside of Justin Fields that I would be comfortable getting, it would be Cole Kmet. But again, it's way late in the draft. I think your return is fine if you get him in the latter rounds of a draft. Again, but it's a tight end, and you're not gonna see Travis Kelce. Like, the guy has broken the bell curve for everybody else. So be patient. And this is a piece that I would be okay with. I do think, because Fields has shown so much trust with him, he led the team in targets and receptions and touchdowns. I have no reason to think that would drop off in any way, other than that DJ Moore shadow that's out there. But realistically, that could work in Cole Kmet's favor. If teams have to honor DJ Moore, then Cole Kmet reaps that benefit.
So I have very mixed feelings about Cole Kmet, because you talk about a guy who last year I was spot on the money with where I had him ranked, and got burnt by him at the complete same time. So it was absolutely astounding. I went back through and I was looking through some things and pulled up some of the rankings. I put him as tight end 7 finish last year going in, and that's where he would finish through our rankings that we do preseason, all of that before the season started, right? So called the shot, told it, said he's going to be the 7th wide receiver or 7th tight end finish overall when the season's said and done. Guess what? He finishes tight end 7 overall, and at the same time, you got a tale of 2 seasons with Cole Kmet, where the first part of the season was unusable for you for fantasy. And if you were starting Cole Kmet during the first part of the season, you were losing games because you were getting really nothing in the way of points when it came down to your tight end position there. And then towards the back half of the season, all of a sudden, Justin Fields starts hybrid targeting him to the point where 69 targets he had last year, 49 of those 69 targets came like week 10 to the end of the season. And there was a bye in there as well. So, all of those targets came in the very back half of the season with really nothing going on in the front of it. So, hopefully that bleeds over and you see similar results and that chemistry having been built up there between Cole Kmet and Justin Fields to the point where you'll see him continuing to feed him. But again, this is one of those that, I'll wait on tight end again, right? 10th round is kind of where he's coming off. Tight end 12 off the board. That's probably about where we're going to see him, somewhere in there. But he does have a little bit more competition this year than he had last year, with Robert Tonyan coming in through free agency here as well. So that's another piece that of a tight end that we've seen have great fantasy production in the past, and makes this room a little bit more murky. So this is one of those that I'm going to proceed with caution a little bit around Cole Kmet. Any other thoughts on Kmet?
Nada.
All right. Robert Tonyan, tight end 42 last year, 53 receptions, 67 targets, 480 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3.9 targets per game. Thoughts on Robert Tonyan?
I didn't love this landing spot for him. Like I really, really was hoping that he'd go somewhere that kind of showcased his receiving ability a little bit better. He flashed well, right? It was 2 years ago, finished as tight end 4, I believe. And then really hasn't even sniffed that. Some injuries have had some things to do with that. But I mean, are the Bears going to run 2 tight end sets all season long? Which is possible because both these guys can block. So that's a possibility. But overall, I'm not drafting Bobby Tonyan. He's going to be left on the free agent wire. He's a guy that, if Cole Kmet goes down with an injury, I will spend some fab to possibly soak him up and use it from there. But in the midst of the draft, I'm going other options.
Alex's take put him, said no thanks. So
yeah, look, he's not one of the top 24 tight ends. I don't think, right? So I have no business dealing with Robert Tonyan.
That's very fair. So looking at it, the difference between, Robert Tonyan and Cole Kmet last year, when it comes to fantasy finish, which there was a big gap between the two of those guys, really the only difference was touchdowns. And do we really think that, Robert Tonyan and Cole Kmet are going to be that dissimilar when it comes to touchdowns? So we think that either one of these guys is going to get back to 50 receptions, 400, almost 500 yards type of thing? I don't. I'm not going to subscribe to that one. So I think these two are going to end up cannibalizing each other to the point where I'm going to ultimately, I think, just be out on both of them. But Robert Tonyan is a guy that is going to end your draft and should end the draft undrafted down there at like tight end 37, where he's kind of currently ranked there. I don't see him rising much at that point there. So I'm out on Bobby Tonyan. Any other thoughts?
Cosign.
All right. Justin Fields finished QB6, 192 completions on 318 attempts, 60.4% completion, 2,242 yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 160 rush attempts, 1,143 yards, and 8 touchdowns to the ground. Thoughts on Justin Fields?
I think his rushing ability easily puts him in the mid QB1 range, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that saves him. Now, 17 touchdowns, you expect him to improve upon that slightly. So if he can get to 22 touchdowns passing for the season and has another 7 or 8 rushing, 30 touchdowns puts you, at least knocking on the door of the top 5. I don't know that he quite gets there, but it's a possibility. So you take him for his legs, right? That's where the upside is. You're taking him for his legs. It's not for, the dynamic passing performances. If you get 1 or 2 of those, honestly, it's just icing on the cake. But he's a fun guy to have on your roster, right? Like, he's a fun guy to root for. And he's a guy that, late in the game, with the ball in his hand and you're needing some chunk fantasy points, right, to make up some ground, he's a guy who can get it to you because he'll use his legs as well to keep the ball marching down the field at the end. So professional NFL wise, I still think there's a lot to be desired, but the Bears decided to take the chance on him. That's why they traded that number 1 pick away, brought in a new weapon, and we're going to see how this offense tries to balance out a little bit more than where it was last year.
Yeah. The issue though with that 1147 that he ran last year, or 1143, whatever it was that, basically 300 of it came in 2 games. And like, you don't expect to see that again, where, he has, crazy games where he goes for 178 and then 147 in back-to-back weeks. Like that, that's not normal. But also Justin Fields is not normal. So I just, you bring up the point of his legs, Kevin, like that's where you get him. You're not, I don't know that you're going to see the drastic improvement in passing. I've been wrong before. I will gladly be wrong again. But I think that with Justin Fields, there is the hope that he can be your Hail Mary, in a week where, you have insufficiencies up and down your roster. Like Justin Fields can hide those flaws. But I just think the inconsistencies of it, it just doesn't make me want to be in on him. So like I understand that it is not a popular choice to say like, Justin Fields, but I would much rather go with consistency and kind of knowing what I'm going to get than go with Justin Fields.
I really like him in 2 quarterback leagues because then you get that super high upside.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to take him first, right? So you take Fields first and then you fall back on a Kirk Cousins. Or a Daniel Jones, or some of that
Geno Smith, even
Geno, right? Those tiers that fall. Russell Wilson, right? Like, and as scary as that sounds, we do think Russell Wilson will bounce back with Sean Payton and everything else. So I think that's why I like it in 2 quarterback leagues, because you have the high, super crazy upside because of the rushing ability to kind of recreate the 2019 Lamar Jackson magic, if you will. And then you have, kind of steady Eddie underneath to balance out some of the lows that you will inevitably see from a rushing quarterback.
Yeah. And what's crazy to think about it, right? I don't know if you guys saw the notification that popped through from Sleeper earlier today where they, per sources in the NFL type of things off a report by, I think it was Jeremy Fowler, that several, NFL execs and teams out there are skeptical of Justin Fields' ability to become a pocket passer. You're not looking for him to be a pocket passer. Like that's not where his magic happens. That's not where you're going to go out and you're going to get a guy to lead this organization and go through it. Right. The guy that's going to get paid the most money had a very similar statistical season to Justin Fields last year, right? Lamar Jackson just signed this super deal. And at the end of the day, they both had within 10 pass attempts of each other. They both had within like 15 completions of each other. They both had the same number of passing touchdowns. They both had the same number of passing yards. Justin Fields outdid Lamar on the ground last year. And they both, and Justin Fields threw like 4 more interceptions than Lamar did. But that's not where you're ultimately going to get this guy, is because of his pocket passing prowess. And we've seen quarterbacks make the big leap from year 2 to year 3. That seems to be where the sweet spot is, where if the guys are going to develop and they're going to develop that accuracy, that's where it happens, seemingly is in that year 2 to year 3. We've seen that in the past. Josh Allen was a guy that, we were saying very similar things when his year 2 to year 3 needed to improve on the accuracy, needed to go through and do that. We did that. Oh my gosh, Josh Allen is either the first or second quarterback off the board. Jalen Hurts, similar thing. Last year, we're going into last year, we said he had to improve the accuracy, had to make those things happen, and is now arguably the top 3 for fantasy to it. And Justin Fields, we could see him make a leap there. Unfortunately, with those other 2 examples I gave, they went out and spent a lot more capital to bring in receiving and receiver weapons around him. And, the Bears have done that a little bit by going out and getting a weapon like DJ Moore, but there's still there's still a lot of holes here with this offense. And, who's going to, is Luke Getsky really the guy to develop him to get Fields to take the next step? But regardless, for fantasy purposes, smash yes.
Here's the other thing. Like you can have all the toys and tools in the world, but if you can't protect him to give him time to locate and identify those toys and tools that are open, then it's a moot point. He's just going to have to scramble and run anyways. But what drives me up a wall, we see this happen time and time again, is that these NFL teams are like, oh, we really like, this rushing upside. That's why we're going to take him. Like they take these guys because they're freak athletes and because they can run and throw the football. And then they get into the NFL. And then 2-3 years later, they're like, well, he can't throw the football. And it's like, what did you expect? That's what you drafted him for. I don't understand it. Like, stop trying to make everybody fit into that Tom Brady box. Like, Tom Brady was good because he knew what was going to happen before the ball was even, set for the down. Like, that's not what everybody is, and everybody's trying to get to that. I'll get off my soapbox, but my God, let the kid play and, take your lumps and bruises and move on. Right.
Yeah, and we've seen when they go out and they actually let him do what he does. He's electric, and the Bears can, they put up a lot of points and they get into close games. Like there was a lot of one-score games that they lost last year that they were in it because of Justin Fields and what he's capable of doing. So, anyway, any other thoughts on the Bears or Justin Fields?
You think they do better than 3-14 next year?
Yeah.
You would think, right?
Yeah, I think they do better. And I think Fields has 1,400 yards rushing.
Wow.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Which number I guess goes higher? His passing touchdowns or his interceptions?
His passing touchdowns.
Do you think interceptions stay the same or go down?
No, I think right there around the double-digit mark is probably a pretty safe bet for him. So I think 10, 12, somewhere in there, 20, call it somewhere between 20 and 24 touchdowns through the air, I think is what we can see from him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I didn't find him to be careless with the football. If anything, He was a little shy, right? On his deep passes, if he missed long, right? He does have a big arm. He wasn't short throwing receivers. So that is inherently a good thing because he also didn't throw that deep ball into double coverage, right? He was single coverage, outside, and deep. Okay, that helps keep interceptions down. And with his mobility, you're not really trying to force it into tight windows a whole heck of a lot because he knows at the end of the day, if it's a smarter play for the team for me to pull the ball down and go get 6, 7, 16, 60 yards. I mean, right, we've seen some of those, but he'll do that here for now. So I think interceptions stay relatively low. I mean, if you can get a 23-11 touchdown to interception ratio and 25 to 2,600 yards, I think the Bears are happy with that. And then all the rushing stuff is the bonus, right? It's the icing on the cake of why he's electric.
Absolutely. All righty, let's hit up the Texans here.
Hey, real quick before we get into the Texans, I misspoke earlier and was still in my what I thought should have happened brain. CJ Stroud is not with Carolina. Obviously, he's with the team we're about to talk to next. It's Bryce Young that's in Carolina. I misspoke. So sorry.
That's all right. Put that in the errors and the omissions. Alrighty, so the Houston Texans 3-13-1 last year, 59% pass, 41% run. They're ranked 31st in points for, 30th in yards for. New coaching staff with D'Amico Ryans, head coach Bobby Slowick is the offensive coordinator here, and we're gonna hop right into the running back room where we always start. Dameon Pierce finished running back 27, 220 rush attempts, 939 yards, 4 touchdowns, 30 receptions on 39 targets, 165 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. Thoughts on Dameon Pierce?
before Kevin gets into it and gets you some really good information, I think what's going to be difficult about the Texans this year is just figuring out what their identity is, because with so much change, right? And it's not just like, oh, they brought in a new coach, but they brought in a new coach who has a defensive mind. They brought in a new, their quarterback. They traded up to go get, a top 3 player on defense as well. So like this is going to be a very difficult, I think, to project in May, what Houston's going to look like in August, September, October. But this is the agonizing exercise we put ourselves through. So there's our disclaimer about the Texans, because I do think they're going to be improved, but I do think it's going to take time. Go ahead. I guess I say all that to say this. Take last year, throw it out the window, because bad quarterback play, had to rely on running backs and, guys that weren't getting everything out of them because of just how down in the dumps that team was. Sorry, go ahead.
Here's your identity with the Houston Texans: defense and running the football, right? That DeMeco Ryans, defensive-minded head coach, coming back home, and you can see it, right? They're building up the secondary. They're brought Will Anderson in, who's no one is really talking about, but they brought Will Anderson in at that 3rd overall pick after their splash day 1 move to kind of shore up the defensive side of the ball, or at least in that pass rusher spot. So all this leads towards Dameon Pierce. So yes, Devin Singletary is down there. I think that they're going to run the ball enough that it's not really going to matter. Dameon Pierce finished 28th last season. Is that right, Derek? I thought I read that correct earlier.
I don't know, 24 last year.
24, excuse me. I think we see an improvement there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes, upwards of like 17, 15, maybe. Touchdowns are going to be a big thing about that, right? Like, he needs to be able to fall into the end zone to capitalize about that. But Dameon Pierce runs aggressively. He fits what DeMeco Ryans played like, just on the other side of the ball. He's not afraid of contact. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Kind of hit that rookie wall last year a little bit towards the end. A full offseason of conditioning and getting used to a new system. But nonetheless, they're going to run the ball. Dameon Pierce is going to be an option that you can pick up as your 3rd running back and be really happy with that, honestly. Like, you could load up early if that's what you choose to do and go something like Christian McCaffrey and then Najee later on, and then Dameon Pierce 2 rounds later. Like, so in your first 5 rounds, you could have those 3 running backs in some draft formats, right? That, not all, but in some. And I'd be pretty happy with that if you're willing to sacrifice other positions. So I like what he does. He came onto the scene last year, and I think he's going to follow it up with a really good sophomore year in Houston, because this team was competitive. Their record was bad, but they didn't roll over. And that is a big thing. Like, it was like the Lions a couple years ago. The Lions were bad, but they didn't roll over on teams. And now we've kind of seen the progression, and this year the Lions are the favorites to win the NFC North right now. So I like it. I like Dameon Pierce. I will have shares of him throughout, because I do think that he is going to be a focal point of this offense to keep the pressure off of Bryce Young.
CJ Stroud.
Yes, CJ Stroud.
I did it to you. I'm sorry. Because I wanted. Never mind. I actually, and Kevin, I don't know that you're going to have the ability to wait on Dameon Pierce. I think that he's going to go a little bit earlier than what I think you might be projecting here. But I do like the fact that he was kind of the bell cow back there. He did have some really great performances last year. And, I like the fact that they do have a young quarterback, and I hope that DeMeco Ryans will allow that young quarterback to develop. And it's a heck of a lot easier to turn around and hand the ball off to somebody than it is to pick apart, these exotic cover 2s that everybody likes to run. So I I like Dameon Pierce to the point where like I could see him, being off the board here in that third round, fourth round. That you may not be able to sit and wait on a Dameon Pierce. I think that stock only goes up as we get closer to redraft season. So I do like the upside that you have with him because he did prove himself to be a viable option down there, and I think it only helps that they have a young quarterback down there now that it's easier to turn around and hand it off. Now, granted, CJ Stroud can run the football himself, so that might hurt a little bit when we get down in closer to goal line situations. But that's the only thing that I could see being an issue there is that he might get hawked a little bit at the goal line and lose out on some touchdowns to his quarterback. But I still like him.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce is a guy that I'm going to be looking and targeting, right? You're coming off the board right now, RB17, pick 40 kind of thing. So you're talking right there early fourth round type of draft capital there. And I like that one because you're talking about either second, potentially third, depending upon how you draft in your format there. But I absolutely love that kind of draft capital, being able to spend that one on it. Bobby Slowick is a guy that coming from the Shanahan system, right? He came over to Houston with D'Amico Ryans from San Francisco, was with Washington with Shanahan before that. And so again, I think that this is one of those that we're going to see very similar kind of strategies and very similar things happen, when they kind of implement that system and bring it through there. So Dameon Pierce, a guy that I think will get a lot of run and will be a way that they can try and, slow things down, run the clock a little bit, try and control the game a little bit more so, and put your young rookie quarterback in favorable situations and put your team in a way to try and win games. So big fan of Dameon Pierce. And Alex, you talked about him potentially creeping up the board, maybe, but the running backs that are, ahead of him right now, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, then you start getting into the Najee and the usual suspects kind of going up there as well. I don't know that we're going to see him necessarily creep up that much right now, unless there's some big maneuverings that happen there. So I feel pretty good about where he's at. Feel really, really confident, pulling the trigger on that one in the draft capital there. Alrighty. Question real quick, and we're going to hit up Devin Singletary. Would you sell Dameon Pierce and the 112 for the 103 to draft Stroud in Dynasty? If it's a super flex and I'm quarterback needy, probably. That's one.
I would agree with that. I think I would have to really need a quarterback. It's not a want, but or
I mean, you could wait and still get a quarterback.
You could go Gibbs, right? Like if you just want the running back, Gibbs will probably be a better fantasy asset years down the road than what Dameon Pierce is. So, I mean, you could even argue that you're giving away a late round first and Dameon Pierce for Gibbs. But honestly, I'm trying to think about this. I guess that's what we need. Is this super flex or single quarterback? If we could get that answered for us real quick, I do think that plays a big part in the direction that I would choose to give here.
If it's super flex and I've got two quarterbacks on there, I'd probably do that to go out and get Stroud. And because if you got two QBs in super flex, you got none. And Jamie did just say that it is super flex. So yes, to the super flex.
Yeah, I mean, off the snowball's chance in hell that you might get Anthony Richardson out of the deal, even better.
Right. And there's a good chance that you might. I've seen Anthony Richardson fall to the 103 a fair bit, right? And a lot of drafts I've been in recently have been having Bijan go 1, Gibbs go 2. So, but yeah, awesome. Alrighty, let's go ahead and jump on into Devin Singletary, running back 24. 178 rush attempts, 822 yards, 5 touchdowns, 38 receptions, 52 targets, 280 yards through the air, and 1 touchdown through the air while he was in Buffalo last year. Thoughts on Devin Singletary?
I think there's going to be more than enough touches to go around here. I think RB24 is going to be a little high for me. I don't think I see him finishing up there, but I do think he could finish in kind of that, I don't know, upper to mid RB3 range, so 25 to 30, right? So it's not that far of a drop off, but I don't think he's going to finish better than Dameon Pierce does.
Yeah, and if draft rankings hold, like, you probably get a pretty good return on investment here, because he's going rather late.
Yeah, running back 44 right now.
Yeah, so that's pretty good return on investment. I agree with you, Kevin. I do think that they're going to run the football a lot more. Now, I do think that, obviously, I think the quarterback will be involved in that as well. But there's enough here that you can be comfortable having him as a, RB2, maybe not on a consistent basis, but certainly in a flex spot. That, like, Devin Singletary, I would be more than okay throwing Devin Singletary in my flex spot week in, week out.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Late round guy, depth piece. Love that, especially when you're talking 127th overall, RB44. So you're talking, round 13, and you're taking you're throwing darts. Might as well take a guy that has proven track record production in this. And again, I think that Houston is going to run the ball a lot more than the 40% they did last year. I wouldn't surprise me to see them bring a much more balanced attack here. And even to the point where Devin Singletary probably still sees about 180 rush attempts on this one would be my guess. And, a little bit better pass catcher out of the backfield than what Dameon Pierce is there as well. So I do like the Devin Singletary, and I like the capital being spent that way. Any other thoughts on the running back room? All right, we're going to do a little with the Houston Texans and their wide receiver room. It tells me that they don't even know what they're wanting to do here. So we're going to play a little rapid fire here. And, we're going to go through kind of the list of them all. I'll flash them through here. Pick a guy that you want to talk about. We'll hit him up, and we'll move on to what appears to be their tight end room and quarterback room. All righty, so the wide receivers, they brought in Robert Woods, who finished wide receiver 64 in Tennessee last year. Nico Collins down in Houston finished wide receiver 78. John Metchie did not play last year. We'll see him make his debut this season. Noah Brown coming in from Dallas, wide receiver 58 last year over in Dallas. They drafted Nathaniel Dell, or Tank Dell, in round 3, pick 69 out of Houston. Xavier Hutchinson, they drafted in the 6th round, pick 105 out of Iowa State. The rookie coming in there. Guys, what are your thoughts on this wide receiver room, and how do you make sense of this nebulous situation?
Nico, I would grab. I would probably have a share or two of Nico Collins. I just like his frame. Like, he is set up as a true X, big body, long, rangy receiver. I think having John Metchie, third back, is going to be a big asset there. I like him more in best ball formats than redraft formats, though. I think it's going to be a little bit boomer bust with him, at least this season, as everybody kind of gets used to this new offensive philosophy. Robert Woods, I'm not touching any part of. Xavier Hutchinson, I will take 4th round flyers on in Dynasty.
Yeah, I'm a little gun shy because I don't know what CJ Stroud's going to look like in the passing game. I think like we said with the running back, I do think that they will be balanced, but whether to be seen whether he can connect and develop some chemistry with these guys. I'm intrigued by a Robert Woods. Probably not where he's going. If I could just look.
He's going undrafted in most leagues.
He is going undrafted. Okay. I'm intrigued just because, he's been there, he's done that. He can be a help to a young quarterback. John Metchie is also – that's fair. I mean, I'm not going to draft him till the end of the draft, but John Metchie is a little intriguing too. But again, like, there's a lot to be seen. I like the much more known commodities of the Houston offense, which is the running backs versus whatever they're going to do with these receivers. Again, like you said, Derek, when you brought this up, they kind of have a hodgepodge, and so it's going to be weird. It's going to be interesting to see which cream rises to the top here as we get through minicamp and training camp.
Right. Nico Collins is the highest drafted guy right now, wide receiver 54, 128. So that puts him as a 13th round. I feel really comfortable. If I was to spend draft capital on him in the 13th round there, I feel like I'm going to probably, at least get the return on that value there, right? Like I don't see him finishing below that. The ceiling is much better on that one. And a lot of it does have to very much depend upon who CJ Stroud finds the connection with and finds the chemistry with and what this offense kind of looks like here. So Nico is probably a guy that I'll go out and I might go after redraft there. Robert Woods, maybe in a best ball, just from the standpoint that you might see him flash 1 or 2 games. Same thing with John Metchie on that one there. The rookies, I've been taking some shots on those in rookie dynasty drafts, but I'm not going to be targeting any of those guys for redraft this season. So again, very much a nebulous situation. And when you've got those nebulous situations, I tend to steer clear of that when it comes to redraft, let the dust kind of settle itself and go from there. Any other thoughts on this wide receiver room?
Woof.
Couldn't have said it better. All righty. Heading into the tight end room, they went and got another guy from Dallas, and Dalton Schultz finished as tight end 10 last year. So not sure what happened there. Dalton Schultz finished at tight end 10 last year, 57 receptions, 89 targets, 577 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5.9 targets per game. Thoughts on Dalton Schultz?
As Alex is going to say, I'm going to steal your phrase before we get to quarterback's best friend, right? I think Schultz can duplicate these numbers. I think Schultz did enough in the passing game last year with Dallas. They want to bring him in to give CJ Stroud some easy completions, right? Let him get in a groove here. So I think Dalton Schultz can have similar, possibly even improve upon these numbers, touchdown dependent, right? That's going to be the big thing. Is he able to get in the end zone 5-6 times? Or if we're only looking at 1 or 2 touchdowns, we are going to see him slide back. But I will take Schultz much in that same area that we talked about Cole Kmet. I will take him waiting on a tight end. You get a hodgepodge of guys. He's absolutely in the mix because I think he's going to be targeted rather heavily until we see one of these wide receivers emerge from the pack, and we know who we can count on.
Yeah, in terms of receiving targets, like this is the guy. But the numbers that we saw last year in Dallas, I think, are similar to what we see in Houston.
Yeah, this is one of those that this very well could be the guy that gets targeted early on. So this one coming off the board, tight end 11, puts him kind of in that 10th round type of draft capital there. I don't mind taking my shot on that. Dalton Schultz has kind of proven that time in, time out. And I would certainly go with that one there. Any other thoughts on the tight end room? All righty. Moving on to the quarterback, CJ Stroud. They drafted him round 1, pick 2 out of Ohio State. CJ Stroud, thoughts?
Dynasty. I think he's worth the second quarterback off the board in Dynasty behind where I would have Anthony Richardson. Redraft wise, single quarterback leagues, I'm not touching him. Super flex leagues, he's honestly, if it's anything like these super flex drafts that Derek and I have done, he's going far too early. Like he is going to finish quarterback 25 to 27. And there's a little bit of upside potential if he uses his legs, but he didn't really do that at Ohio State. Not that he can't, he just didn't. So I'm going to want to see it before I truly buy into his ability to use his legs, or if he's going to sit back and just let it rip. Now, He has the arm to do it, right? We saw what he did against a good, I wouldn't say that 2022's Georgia's defense was great compared to 21, but they were still a good defense, and he lit them up in the semifinals, right? Like that was the game of damn near the decade in that Ohio State-Georgia game, and CJ Stroud went toe-to-toe with everything that Georgia had, and if it wasn't for an untimely injury to his best receiver on the field since JSN didn't play, there's a good chance Ohio State would have been your national champions and not Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, he everything that Kevin just said, I will reiterate. Like I totally co-sign. I need to see it first. I'm not going to, invest that much that early for a redraft. But for Dynasty, certainly is a very intriguing prospect. And Derek, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I will play a game with you guys. With as we sit right now, some of the quarterbacks that are kind of around CJ Stroud, you let me know if you would rather have them or CJ Stroud, because I think there are some choices to be made at this point. So I'll give you Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas.
Give me Jimmy.
Oof.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's a wolf.
Probably Jimmy. Probably
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Mac Jones.
Give me Mac Jones.
I think I'd take Stroud over Jones.
Okay.
Trey Lance.
Nope, pass.
You'd rather have Stroud?
I don't want the second string quarterback in San Francisco.
That's fair. Yeah.
Go, son.
Okay. And then I'll give you Ryan Tannehill is kind of ranked right below CJ Stroud right now.
I'd probably take Tannehill. I'd also probably take the next guy in Ritter.
Yeah. But think about that though. Like that. I know it's early, but those are the types of quarterbacks that you're going around. And if you are seeing, CJ Stroud in a redraft league go before those guys, I mean, power to the people that are taking him.
If he had better weapons, I think I'd move him higher up as a rookie. Like,
Exactly.
I just don't love it. I like Nico well enough. I like Dalton Schultz, but I just don't, and Dameon Pierce, but I just don't like anything else that they have down there yet. I understand what they're doing. They're building defense first. Honestly, they're trying to build inside out. Yep. I understand it. It's the right way to build an NFL team. It is kind of puke-a-rama for fantasy purposes, though.
Yep.
You just saw how much or little time, depending upon how you look at that, across 6 receivers there for the Houston Texans. Because, yeah. So I think CJ Stroud is going to have a tough go of it rookie season. But, all right. Any other thoughts on the Texans or CJ Stroud? All righty. Let's go ahead and head on into the last team of the night. The Arizona Cardinals, 4-13 last year, 60% pass, 40% run. They ranked 21st in points for, 22nd in yards for. Coaching change happened. Jonathan Gannon, new head coach. Drew Petzing is the offensive coordinator. And we're going to start in the running back room where we always do. James Conner finished RB20, 183 rush attempts, 782 yards, 7 touchdowns, 46 receptions, 58 targets, 300 yards through the air, and 1 touchdown through the air as well. Thoughts on James Conner?
James Conner is a very serviceable RB2. He has RB1 upside when he is right and that offense is clicking. But with the injury of Kyler Murray, James Conner just went through the floor, right? Like it was so easy to just load the box and dare everybody else to try and beat them. I do think that kind of stunted it. Obviously, he had some touchdown regression from 2 seasons ago. It was an unfortunate situation for James Conner. That being said, he's not a bad RB2 option. I would much rather have him as my 3rd running back, which is possible with how all this is shaking out. So more than likely he would be my number 3 running back, and I would be really okay with that because if I can have 3 in the top 24, more often than not, I'm happy with how that part of my roster has been built.
Yeah, I was big on James Conner last year, and unfortunately, I mean, look, he was a touchdown fiend 2 years, 2 years ago, and I knew going in he wasn't going to match that. That was pretty remarkable what he was doing in terms of finding the end zone. But the team just there was no help around him when Kyler got hurt. It was pretty much over. So I think that you might have a lot of people like me with the recency bias of what James Conner was. I think there's somewhere in the middle, right? I think there's somewhere in the middle of what 2 years ago was and what last year was. That's where James Conner is. I think that's your level. And I would say, to Kevin's point, I don't know that you're going to get him to be your third running back without having to reach, but that would be certainly ideal.
Yeah, but there is a chance that you can put him on as your third RB because of where he's going, right? As RB kind of 22 off the board, coming off the board in kind of the fifth round there. Early to mid fifth. So you could do it. You're going to be very running back heavy in rounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you could certainly do that there. And as like a flex option, James Conner does a couple of things really nice for your fantasy roster. If you can put him in as a flex, one, he's pretty consistent. He's not going to necessarily go out and win you a week, but he typically isn't going to lose you a week either. He's going to be very consistent in there, getting you anywhere from that kind of 8 to 12 points type of thing. Like you can just pretty consistently bank on that one in a half point PPR there, which good production out of your flex type of spot there. So I like that one. I don't know that I really like this offense down here in Arizona. They've switched gears a little bit and they went on the defensive side of the ball here. Really being offensive loaded as far as what their priorities were in the past here. Kyler coming off that knee injury, unlikely that we see him right before the season goes. And even if he is ready to go there is a chance that he doesn't have some of that dual threat ability that he is so good at. And without his ability to get out, shift the pocket around and see over that line to it, it's going to make them a little bit more one-dimensional there. And one-dimensional defenses are very, very easy to stop at the NFL level. So I think James Conner will get a pretty decent workload. I don't know that I'm seeing him go more than about 200 touches, more than 800 yards and call it a handful of touchdowns. So I think we'll see kind of a similar finish in that back end of RB2 type of territory there. Top end RB3. So I like Jamie's thought there. He says like and subscribe. Make sure that you do that, guys. All right. Let's go ahead and hit on into the next running back here. Keontae Ingram. Somebody fell asleep when they were doing that graphic there. But Keontae Johnson, 27 rush attempts, 60 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions, 5 targets, 21 yards, 0 touchdown. Thoughts on Keontae Ingram?
Pass. I mean, it just doesn't strike my fancy, right? Like, honestly, it's probably not a bad idea if you're a James Conner owner, grabbing him super late to have that handcuff if that's what you're looking to do. But I don't think he has any standalone value, at least as I see it to this point. We'll see how the season kind of shakes out, but I do think Arizona has other weapons galore, and they're not going to truly feature, their number 2 running back.
Yeah, I'll look elsewhere.
The only reason that Keontae Ingram should be on your fantasy roster is if you have James Conner and you picked him up in the last pick of your draft, or you picked him up off the waiver wire to just handcuff. Like, this is not a guy that you should be spending draft capital on outside of you drafted James Conner and you want the handcuff. That's it. All right. Moving on to the wide receiver rooms. DeAndre Hopkins, wide receivers, 47, 64 receptions, 96 targets, 717 yards, 3 touchdowns, an average of 10.7 targets per game. Thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins?
no Kyler equals no touchdowns, right? I mean, it was a big blow when they lost Kyler. And Nuke did what he could, but it's just the quality of quarterback play isn't there. And he's another year older, still super aggressive, still has great hands, can find ways to beat coverage, and is very good against contested catches. That being said, he's fallen down a little bit, right? Like, I do think that he is more of a wide receiver 2 when all this shakes out. I mean, it depends on how fast Kyler can get back, right? And I think that's what is still unknown. Like, when is Kyler going to be the Kyler Murray that we expect? And the sooner that happens, I think the sooner Nuke is kind of that steal. But for him missing the first, 6 games last year? I mean, that's not a bad stat line for only getting in 2/3 of the season.
So here's what I don't love about getting DeAndre Hopkins this year is that, like, his name was floated around there so much in the trade talks, right? Like, will he, won't he, was he going to go to Baltimore? Did he, there were reports out there that he was basically, all they had to do was sign the paper and it was done, and that never happened. And so, is he going to be a disgruntled wide receiver? Like, is he going to take on that Allen Robinson role in Chicago a few years back? Like, what are we going to see out of D-Hop? But as long as he's playing and Kyler Murray's playing, then yeah, he's worth making sure that you're keeping tabs at least where he is on the draft board. Derek, tell me where he's going right now.
Wide receiver 2047.
That's a little high.
I think that's a sweet spot for him. I think so, right? And this is the difference. What's rich for one person, another person finds attractive. I'm okay with that. I can take that gamble there, playing a full season, having an off season to work with the other quarterbacks, knowing that Kyler may not be back week 1, potentially, but may not be, and build up some of that rapport. You basically have to get through the first 3 weeks without Kyler. Worst case scenario, in my opinion. But he's still putting up points, which is better than the 6-week absence he had last year with 0 points and nothing you could do about it. So,
then he also didn't play the last 2 weeks either.
Yeah.
So he missed the first 6, and then Arizona season was done. They basically just sat him the last 2 weeks. Kyler was no longer there. Injuries galore. Yeah, a done season for them at that point.
Yeah. So I like him at 20. I will absolutely invest at that mark.
So, I mean, even if we see some regression here on this one, where 10.7 targets per game is just ridiculous. That's a 180 pace target, almost 200 target pace type of thing. So even if we see him regress down to, I don't know, only 7 or 8 targets, that's a very healthy target share that if I could have that as my wide receiver 2, I'm loving that. 4th round draft capital, 20th pick overall. Yeah, our 20th wide receiver overall. Yeah, I'll take that one because I think that he can absolutely outperform a lot of the other wide receivers in that range and going ahead of him. Let's just take a look here. So, DJ Moore, would you rather go DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore? I think I'd rather draft DeAndre Hopkins at that point. DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen. Okay. Yeah, maybe. I could probably get down on that.
Keenan Allen there.
DeAndre Hopkins, Deebo Samuel. DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper.
I think that's the one.
Yeah,
I think I take D-Hop over everybody else you just listed until right there. I like what Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson could do. We'll see if they make it happen, but I do like the potential there between Cooper and Watson.
Yeah.
Only because Watson has a full season.
Here's an interesting one of another guy that's around there. Speaking of Watson, Christian Watson in Green Bay.
DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm taking Nuke over Christian Watson.
Is because of quarterback situation?
It's just unknown. Now,
Yeah,
I think I'm higher on Jordan Love than a lot of people. I think Jordan Love's going to come in and play.
I think he's going to do
really
fine.
well.
Yeah.
But that being said, there are areas where I'm not going to go out and just pump that in every single draft I'm doing, right? Like I will hedge my bets and I will take some chances on Watson and Love and be able to kind of marry those two up in some certain leagues.
Yeah.
And then there's some others where I'm probably going to pivot, go a different direction to make sure I have some true diversity in guys that I think are pretty close to the same.
Fair enough.
There's some rookies flying around in D-Hop's area as well.
I'm taking over every single rookie.
It's fair. I was gonna say
if Tyler Lockett blows his knee out in training camp, I might consider JSN on
Jordan Addison.
God, no. Jordan Addison is going to be a great wide receiver 3. We'll cover that when we do the Vikings.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a solid wide receiver 3. He's not going to finish wide receiver 20 or above.
No.
I still am just not. For no reason, I just don't know if he's 100% committed. D-Hop, that is.
Which is possible. I mean, we saw him force his way out of Houston.
Yeah, like we've seen this play out before. So it just,
he was in his prime though. Like he wanted to get paid, and Houston wasn't going to pay him. Yeah. Arizona did. And maybe you get towards the trade deadline, and maybe he finds himself in a better situation. Like if the Cowboys feel like they're a wide receiver away,
right?
Arbitrary, right? I know that they have Lamb and they brought in Brandon Cooks and everything else. The Chiefs, how about that? If the Chiefs, if they have some issues at wide receiver and this group of guys just isn't working, if Sky Moore is a bust, Rasheed Rice isn't quite what they thought he was going to be, or at least not developing as quickly as they need him to, and
Darius Toney still has a hamstring.
Yeah, Tony's hurt. Like if the Chiefs need to make a move, good Lord, man, he goes from your wide receiver 2 to how could you not love the matchup between D-Hop and Patrick Mahomes for even half a season? Like that's damn near league winner if that were to happen.
Well, and at that point, how do you stop the Chiefs? Because you've got contested catch guy. Like, good luck. Just trying to pick your poison. And anyway, can't double team them both. All right. Let's go ahead and head to our next wide receiver here. Then Marquise Hollywood Brown came over draft day type of trade there. Wide receiver 46, 67 receptions, 107 targets, 709 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8.9 targets per game. Thoughts on Hollywood Brown?
He's another guy. I like him as a wide receiver too. He shot out of a cannon the first 6 weeks until he got injured. Like shot out of a cannon. He was amazing with Kyler. Injuries kind of derailed that a little bit, but I think he does bounce back. I like him as a wide receiver too. Like, I think that you can absolutely play that. It's not the sexiest pick, but I do think it's going to be very serviceable.
Yeah, I will. As much as I disagreed about D-Hop with Kevin, I totally agree with him here about Marquise Brown.
So I like Marquise Brown where he's coming off the board right now at wide receiver 33. But we definitely saw once D-Hop got back, the priority shifted in that offense pretty significantly there from Marquise Hollywood Brown, who was getting just peppered with targets early on in the season before the injury happened, came back, right? Like, the focus was very much on D-Hop, and I would expect that to continue there. But I do like Hollywood Brown as a, certainly as a best ball candidate. Like he's a one play, one touch can make a big play type of guy. Also like him for redrafts in a flex type of role and a depth piece type of deal. My 3rd, 4th wide receiver. Big fan of that kind of move there, but not looking to go out there and necessarily spend draft capital to put him on as like a 2nd wide receiver onto my roster there. Alrighty. Let's hit up Rondell Moore here. Wide receiver 88, 41 receptions, 56 targets, 414 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 targets per game. Thoughts on Rondell Moore?
I pass.
Pass.
This is not this regime's wide receiver. Now, he could be used for gadgetry plays, maybe a bit of a change of pace guy, but this regime did not draft him. It will not be long before he is looking for a new employer.
Yeah, I don't think you need to put him on your roster.
Right. You already got a small, quick, shifty guy that you went out and traded for and spent really good draft capital on, or draft capital, trade capital on to bring in Hollywood Brown here. So again, right, cosign, no thank you to the Rondell Moore. Let's go ahead and head to the tight ends here. Zach Ertz finished tight end 19, 47 receptions, 69 targets, 406 yards, 4 touchdowns, 6.9 targets per game. Thoughts on Zach Ertz?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he like tight end 6 before he got injured? Zach Ertz was having a very good season before he got dinged up. So I like Zach Ertz. Kyler Murray obviously felt comfortable with Zach Ertz. Like, I do think that's a good thing, especially as he's coming back from injury, trusting that leg, getting used to planting off of that when he's turning around and throwing the ball. So I think you can get Zach Ertz fairly cheap. Like, I know that he's going to be fighting for targets with Trey, but I think he's worth a late round flyer, especially if you're going to be floating between 2 different tight ends for most of the season. I think this is a pretty good number 2 tight end.
Yeah, as like a string option, if you're streaming option. If you're looking at that, I don't even know. Is he even being drafted at this point? Oh, there he is. All right, sorry.
I didn't 21, not really.
Yeah, and so like that's pretty rough. But like as a reliable piece, a stash if you have deep rosters. I still think Zach Ertz is serviceable in this league. Kevin brings up a good point. He's going to be fighting for some love with the next guy we talk about, but I still think he's serviceable. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up having a better season than the next guy we'll talk about.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is a guy that still can find a way to get into the end zone, still can find a way to make the catch there. And where he's coming off the board right now, tight end 21, like picking the 160s, he's going undrafted in most leagues. This is like we've already said more than once on the show over the last months that it's Travis Kelce or bust. It's you draft Travis Kelce in the early capital, and if you don't get him, you move on and you play the late round tight end type of deal. Zach Ertz is a great late round tight end candidate there that you can pick up, last draft pick off the waiver wire in a lot of leagues there, and is a guy that can potentially produce, right? Like Kevin mentioned it before he got hurt. He was, he was very consistently in that lower end tight end 1. So very serviceable tight end for you. Not spending much draft capital there. I think that continues. So worth a shot late round there.
I will say something else to add to it. It's he may not be back week 1, so it could take a little while. That you may need to wait and see.
Wait and see. I like it. All right. Trey McBride finished tight end 40 last year, 29 receptions, 39 targets, 265 yards, 1 touchdown, average of 3.3 targets per game. Thoughts on Trey McBride?
I think McBride looked like a rookie, right? When Zach Ertz went out. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Normally tight ends take 3 years to develop in the NFL. He got thrown into the Lions' den a little bit sooner. So I do think that helps his progression as Zach Ertz is in the twilight of his career. That's not, any big news for anybody. So I think he improves upon this. I think he becomes a streaming tight end option. Beginning of the season, he might make some starting rosters, right? Especially if Ertz is a little slow coming back from injury, just to see what they have. But he is definitely a tight end 2. He is not a guy that I am comfortable saying set it and forget it, or even play regardless of matchup, right? It is definitely matchup dependent at the moment.
Matchup and roster dependent. Kevin, is that thunder going on outside?
That is thunder going on. Dude, we don't ever get like thunderstorms in Colorado right now, and I have the window open and there's lightning and thunder galore. Like, it's actually really cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Sorry, I thought you were rolling a ball bearing across a desk or something.
Oh no, dude, it's the show going on outside. It's cool.
I can appreciate that. They've got Trey McBride is right around where Zach Ertz is going right now, correct? Like, they're kind of right next to each other in terms of where their ADP is right now. So, if Ertz isn't healthy to start the season, Trey McBride obviously takes a bigger role. But I think ideally what Arizona was thinking when they brought Zach Ertz in and then drafted Trey McBride was, it does take 3 or so years to develop a tight end in this league. And it would be nice to not have to go through those growing pains and allow those to happen on the practice field and not, showing up on Sunday. So it was unfortunate that, Ertz tore his ACL and, we got to see what Trey McBride could do probably a little sooner than anybody wanted him to. But
he showed flashes, right?
He did. He did.
Of really good play, and then there are others like, yeah, you're a rookie.
Yeah, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Ertz has a better season than Trey McBride, but I also wouldn't be surprised if those numbers are super comparable.
Yeah, this is again one of those that he's coming off the board tight end 20, so one spot before Zach Ertz. And I think that's a pretty fair deal to it. This is one that the quarterback situation is going to be fluid to begin the season on this one. We don't know where, if Kyler's going to be back, when he's going to be back. Even if he is back early, is he, the mobile version of Kyler? I would think that he's probably a little bit slower here. So I think this offense is going to look very different this year than we've seen it the last couple of years. To the point where, again, right, I'll take a late round flyer on him, maybe pick him up off of a waiver wire, undrafted type of thing there. But not looking to spend early draft capital on Trey McBride. And I think that we see kind of a middling tight end 2 type of ceiling for him. So, all righty, let's go ahead and head into the quarterback room. Kyler Murray, who finished quarterback 19 last year, 259 completions, 390 attempts, 66.4% completion, 2,368 yards to the air, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 67 rush attempts, 418 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Thoughts on Kyler Murray?
I'm expecting better numbers, even when he returns off this injury, right? Last year, he never had all of his weapons on the field at the same time, right? Like, he never had Ertz, Hopkins, Brown, and Connor all playing with him at the same time. So you expect these guys to get healed up, come back. I like the possibility of Kyler. I think he is a guy who is going to be quarterback 15 by the time it's all said and done with. Like, I think he just misses the top 12. But when he comes back from injury, I think he's going to show some flashes of brilliance using these weapons in a new system. So buyer beware. Make sure you get him at the right price, especially in redraft leagues. Don't overpay and think he's going to be, quarterback 7 right out of the gate. Let someone else draft that pain and be frustrated. If you can get him later on, that is the way to go. And we'll obviously keep everybody up to date on this as we get closer to the start of the regular season, with today being the 9th of May. There's a lot of time for him to recover and news to come out. But nevertheless, I like the upside. I like the weapons, but I am interested to see how this offense is going to flow.
Am I the only one hearing that?
Is it the rain outside?
It might be. It sounds like somebody's using the bathroom.
No. My Gatorade bottle's right here, y'all. I don't know what you want me to do, but it is raining now.
No, that's good. It's fine. I was like, is somebody hijack our feed here? So to Kyler, I think there's going to be a lot of people that take him at a price that's too high for where he's going to finish. I think you need to be careful about where you get him. Just as Kevin was saying, there are other quarterbacks. I think in a 2-quarterback league, you know how we kind of talked about the idea of having, Justin Fields even as a quarterback who is, you're going to have to pay that flash in the pan, and then you kind of want something else that might be a little more reliable in that 2-quarterback league in that second spot. I don't know that Kyler really fits either of those molds of, being the flash in the pan or the more reliable. So I would caution the Kyler Murray. Like, this is so different from even 2 years ago. But I mean, he didn't play a full season in 2021. He didn't play a full season in 2022. Is there a pattern starting to develop here? So that's the big thing that I think you need to be careful with. I think in a lot of leagues, Kyler's going to go a lot higher than he should. And I think you will do well if you are patient and he falls to you in the right spot. But just understand that this isn't the Kyler Murray of 2020. Like, this is a different beast that you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, I mean, right now, quarterback 20 coming off the board in a lot of cases there. That seems like an okay spot to take him, right? Like, you're playing back half of the season at that point. And in Superflex, I think I'd rather gamble a little bit different way there, right? Like, I'd rather take an upshot on a guy that isn't coming off of a significant injury, and a guy that has that, and a quarterback that needs to rely on his legs a little bit to create. So, Kyler Murray is, unfortunately for me, I just don't think that he's going to be on really any of my rosters outside of where I've already got him in Dynasty. Like, I'll go that route there, but for Superflex, I'll probably kick that can down the road until next year.
For a 22nd round?
22nd round, sure. Like,
and that's where I'm stuck, right? Like, I have, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as we get closer. I have Jalen Hurts, who I really like. And then I have Justin Jefferson, who I really like. And I have Kyler Murray. I get to keep 2. So I get to keep Hurts in the 2nd, Jefferson in the 7th, or Kyler Murray in the 22nd. Like, but I did that on purpose. So when one of our league mates dropped Kyler, I picked him up on purpose, because even if I don't keep Kyler, I was not going to let anybody else keep him on the cheap, if you will. Like, I'm going to make other people pay his true value, not the discounted value if I were to choose to keep him.
Fair enough. At that point, right, like, you're talking last round of the draft, sure, take that shot on him. But if you're right, like, for the most part in that league, if you're talking quarterback 20 off the board, you're talking, in a lot of cases, 7th, 8th round. So there's a huge difference in there, and a huge difference in draft capital. But again, right, like, even in most Superflex leagues, Kyler's going to not be making an appearance on the majority of my rosters. So I'm staying away from that one. Any desire to touch on Colt McCoy?
No. If Kyler's not playing, I'm not drafting Colt McCoy. I don't care.
Fair enough. Alrighty, guys. So that's going to take us down here to the end of it. We'll hit up the questions here in a couple of weeks that Alex had brought up there. So we'll kick that can down the road here just a little bit, and that's going to take us to the end of it, guys. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Stay tuned. Right, we get 3 down, 29 to go. So tons of team breakdowns. Tons of drafts going on right now. Hit us up if you have any questions. We're more than happy to give an opinion, advice, maybe some trade options as we get into this off season. So hit us up, let us know. We love to interact with everybody, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, we got more of these coming. Well, they'll be fun.
Alrighty, that's going to do it for us. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you're hitting us up on all those socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. And of course, head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell. Player breakdowns, player profiles coming at you. You don't want to miss those. And a lot more content to get y'all ready for this upcoming fantasy football season. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloo.